All right, Craig, what's up, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, man, it sure has. It's been one hell of a I don't know year so far. We're only a few days in, right?
Yeah, oh shit, oh shit. It's I was because I think last time I talked to you, like it was like really early in the pandemic, like we were all just starting to hunker down. It had to be like what March or April or something like that. It was like real early in. I know that much.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it had to be, man. And now I've somehow missed it and never got it. Never got it. I've been working. Our work never stopped. And last Monday, I got tested positive for coronavirus. So here we go.
How how,
So
how was it? Was it miserable? Was it
it was, man, it was all right. For me, luckily, I didn't have a lot of bad symptoms, but the number one thing is I lost all smell and I lost all taste, and I have not got it back yet. Like I got nothing. I mean, nothing. No, I mean, it like you put. We had Monday night of the college football national championship. Kim
oh
made
man,
like yeah, she made like these nachos with like this spicy taco meat and everything, and that is when I realized I had it. I couldn't taste one damn thing, man. It was terrible,
yeah, dude.
terrible, dude.
What's life like when you can't taste or smell? I mean,
Dude, hey, let me.
that's one of the beauties, right? Like having the senses. Like I mean, jeez.
God, and I love to eat. I'm telling you, man. Like my wife and I, like we look forward to like we put our kids to bed and then we'll go have dinner alone. Like we'll do something different than the kids, and now it's just like what I say now is like it doesn't matter. She's like, "What do you want for dinner?" Doesn't matter. Like what do you want on your pizza? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Like
matter.
it's crazy, man.
Oh man, are you feeling better now, though? At least.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly feel fine. I don't have a fever. I just coughing a little bit. It's just that one thing that I'm dealing with. Hopefully, I can go back to work on Wednesday or Thursday. So
Okay,
we'll
cool.
see.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good news. I mean, it sucks you can't
yeah,
taste or smell, but I mean, it's
yeah. It's terrible, man.
yeah.
It's terrible.
All right, cool, man. Let's catch up. I think last time I talked to you, you weren't even on the new canoe team, or maybe it was in the works. But
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
changed in 2020. You did a few more competitions, I think, than you thought you were going to do. After talking to you on the show,
yeah.
just give a recap of what you thought of 2020, some of the big things you're excited about. If you got some things that you don't want to talk about that would be fun to talk about, you should talk about those too. Shit like that.
Well, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, man.
Let me ask you this: you being a crankbait guy, that's one of the reasons I brought. Well, there's a lot of reasons why I brought you on, but like, how much has the new canoe and like the spotlight or whatever the motor guide? How much has that changed the way you fish as far as like because now you got that stabilizing platform that doesn't move. And I think I was eavesdropping on one of your other conversations on the podcast, and like one of the reasons you got in the crankbait, and we're gonna talk about this later, but just to talk about new canoe just a little bit, like one of the reasons you got into it because the ability to just fish fast and the kayak always moving and not being able to stay in one place, like fishing a crankbait was a little bit more efficient, I'd say, than some of the more I guess precise finesse type fishing or whatever. But
right.
now you had the ability to go offshore, stay in a fixed position and fish using your graph and things like that. Has it changed the way you fish at all, having that motor guide and the new canoe?
It has, man, and here's the thing with fish. For me, I love chasing current. I love fishing current. I love going up to dams and fishing a lot of current seams. I feel super comfortable in that environment. A lot of guys don't like it. It makes them nervous, uncomfortable. But for me, it's just something about it. And when you have a motor that can hold you in place, but the key is not necessarily holding you in place. The key is being able to stand up and fish naturally. That's one of the big things for me is I have a few back issues here and there, and I've always been a paddle guy. I've tried pedaling kayaks, and it's just not for me. But I just love standing and fishing. And now, with that bow-mounted motor on there, I can fish efficiently. I can stay in place, and I can stand up and make longer casts. Fishing crankbait, you have to make long casts. If you don't make long casts, you don't get the bait down where you need to, and it goes in the strike zone and out just way too quickly. So standing up and getting those long bomb casts, makes a big difference. But my fishing style hasn't really changed the way I fish, the way I approach things. But I think being efficient, that's from for kayaking. Being efficient is really what it's all about.
Right.
And that's the number one thing I like about having that bow mount XI3.
Yeah. Well, how were you? in talks of coming on the team when I was talking to you? Was that something you knew was going to happen? Have you had your eyes on New Canoe for a while? It's like, how did that relationship start? Because I feel like Derek Brundle, I don't know if you know him, but he recruits a lot of people. I feel like you hang out with Derek Brundle for like a day, next thing you know, you're looking for like discounts on like motor guys and New Canoe. I think I'm actually on the New Canoe team or something like that. that he pulled behind my back or some shit like that. But it gets you, man. That whole team gets you. Like you hang out with any guy that has a New Canoe, next thing you know, like you're online, like asking your wife if you can buy a new boat. You know?
That's funny, man. The relationship started. I've known Everett and Mike Schmitz for a long time. Back when Chad just started the KBF, national championship over. I think I met Everett at Kentucky Lake, and Mike, he was in Tennessee where I was for a long time. And it was actually last year. I'm sorry, 2019. So not last year, but the year before. Everett kind of hit me up about being part of that's when the New Canoe kind of started to growing that year. They started getting some momentum, not last year, but the year before. And I was like, I committed to Wilderness Systems, and I was good with it, man. Wilderness Systems is great. Nobody did anything wrong to me or anything. I still love the boats and everything. They make great boats. But it was in the back of my head, And then, I was running Torqeedo, which is a great product. But for my style of fishing, being able to have that control, I kept going back. It was early last year. And I was actually fishing Lake Chickamauga, and I was fishing a shell bed. And I had a bad headwind, and the current was ripping sideways, and I couldn't get in position. And I knew if I was in a bass boat, I could get that exact cast, the exact spot. It was driving me crazy. And I remember I was fishing alone. I got frustrated. I packed up, and on my way home, I started messaging and calling Cody Milton, Derek Brundle, Mike Schmitz, and Everett. Like I was bugging all of them, right, asking questions. And that's kind of how it happened, to be honest with you. And before you know it, Everett was calling me and Mike was calling me. And I mean, it was just a really cool, they were trying to get me on the team. And I just, I felt like, man, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, man. And I had to make calls to Jeff Little, to Tim Perkins, with Wilderness and with Jeff at Torqeedo. And those were hard phone calls. They were really, like, I'm not going to lie, man, it was not Jeff Little. I respect more than probably any kayak fisherman in the whole industry. And I had to call him and be like, man, I think I want to do something different, and Jeff's such a smart guy, he's trying to convince me to stick around. And, I didn't feel bad for it, man, but I really wanted to have that control that bow mount would give. And that's 100%, what it was about. I mean, right. It is what it is, Well,
let me ask you about the whole team thing. Like something I'm seeing, like, especially with the New Canoe team, compared to like when other people were talking like, oh, I'm on this team, I'm on the Jackson team or the, or whatever kayak team. And I'm not talking shit about any of them, but it's like, it just feels like you're just joining the team, like, not kind of like a pro staff team or
yeah.
When I look at the New Canoe team, I'm just like, nah, those aren't pro. I mean, I know they do. I know they work. I know like Brundle and Rob and those guys, they do work their ass off for New Canoe. But at the same time, it's like, no, that's a team out there like trying to win medals and stuff. That's a team that's out there. Like they're trying to put together people to go to tournaments and whoop ass and make pictures and podiums and stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
Do you feel the same way? Like you guys, like it's like almost like a professional team, like whatever for our sport. Like, I feel like the New Canoe is like really into that, not just finding people that can just advertise and put the products out there, but like really like a fishing team. Like
right.
guys are going down there to catch checks.
Yeah, well, Everett told me, I mean, that was one of his goals. I mean, he told me straight up. I mean, he wanted to build, New Canoe was growing, I would say 3 to 4 years ago, they started getting some momentum. And then they really wanted to break into the tournament scene and really have those few anglers, that are up there, holding the big checks and, on all the KBF shows and all that stuff. And that was one of Everett's goals. And he did that, man. I mean, Derek and Matt and Cody. I mean, look, with me with 2 kids, I can't compete as much as those guys do. And I can hang, but I mean, when those guys put that much time on the water, it's tough to compete, just to be straight up honest with you. I mean, that's how it is. But getting those guys, man, I mean, Matt, I think this is just the beginning for him, man. He
oh God, yeah.
I haven't spent a lot of time with him, but I had dinner with him at the KBF National Championship. and hung out and talked to him and Derek a good while. And let me tell you, man, those guys are not going anywhere. It's going to be awesome.
I met them both. Like I tell a story so many times. I probably should tell you more, but it's like when I met Matthew Kahn, I met him at the Sandy Cooper. This was before that was his first like national like in-person tournament, and I was staying at the house with him and Derek Brundle, and Derek told me he's like, dude, what? Like, because I met Derek Brundle the same way. I met him at up in New York at the Lake George event for KBF. That was his first in-person event, and you had no idea these guys were gonna be like. I had no idea. Like, I would have kissed their ass a lot more than what I did. You know, I mean, like, but I had no idea that Derek Brundle was gonna be like rookie of the year, third place at the 10, and I'm hanging out, at Sandy Cooper with Matthew Kahn at his first event. I'm just over there drinking beer, having a good time, and they're over there like getting in depth in their fishing stuff and looking at maps, and I'm just like, I had no idea what these guys are doing, and then. The next thing you know, like he's a national champion, rookie of the year, won everything he could possibly win in one day at a KBF national championship, and. Dude, like, and those guys do nothing but work and hustle. Like, I mean, there's a reason why those guys are cashing checks the way they do.
Yeah, the Derek, I don't know all of what he does for tournaments, but he puts in tons and tons of time. I mean, I think he has a binder where he brings all these papers and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know all the details, but I know look, that's his, props to him, man. All I got to say is props to him. Those guys earn it. I mean, I'm telling you, I've told them many times. I even got on the team page after the national champion and said, "Look, it's an honor to be on the team with you guys. You guys are killing it, and I'm hoping I can be on the tournament team again next year, or this year now with them because I mean, those guys, they're badass, man.
Yeah, no,
they're good.
So, what are you thinking of this year? Like, and I know you did a few tournaments last year, 2021. Like, any big changes for you?
Man, I'm not 100% sure. Last year was a pretty good year. I did Lake Seminole. I think I got 5th place at the Hobie tournament. I was happy with that one. And then I had a good finish at the Bassmaster event over in Alabama. I think I was 15th or 16th. I got a good check there and a few other good events here or there. But for this year, man, I'm going to go try co-angling for the first time.
Nice.
I'm going to go the BFL. The Bulldog division. They fish Lake Lanier and some lakes around me. And I've always wanted to try. I've been talking about it for years to go try and be a co-angler. Go fish. Really, I just want to see how other guys fish and how they line up to stuff and how, kind of their mindset. So, if I have 6 or 7 tournaments where I spend 8 hours with, 6 or 7 different guys, I mean, surely it'll be a fun learning process. And also I want to catch, just go out and go catch some more fish on my local waters, really.
Right. Yeah. I thought about co-angling. I don't even know how to get into it, but for the same reasons. I mean, up here we get a lot of like the big series. I'm sure you do too. But like I got a buddy that's doing the co-angler, and he's fished with like some of the best guys in the country on the back of their boats, learning whether it was And he'd be like what are we doing today? Oh, we're just drop shotting. So bring 3 drop shotting rods. That's what we're doing. And then you go out there, you learn how to fish. And the best thing about it, like you learn to go out how to fish like a Pacific lake. Like up here we have like the St. Lawrence River, which I'm absolutely terrified, but because you don't want to get on that on a kayak with, but on a boat you can. And to go learn how to fish a body of water like that, because there are big differences, fishing like some of these crazy ass fishers we have here in the Northeast compared to like the Tennessee chains and stuff like that. Like they're different bodies of water, like different depths, different clarity, and to go there and fish with people who actually understand how to fish it and who are out there trying to cash big checks on them. Dude, you're going to learn something. I mean, as long as the guy's not a dick, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, I've done my research and I've heard a lot of good things about co-angling. I've also heard a lot of bad things. I heard a lot of times you can get, what do they call it? Backboated, where, if the problem is if I was in a boat, I parallel a lot of banks throwing crankbaits. And if a guy's in the back, I mean, if that's the pattern, what are you going to do? I mean, because you got to get that boat right up against the bank or you're out of the strike zone and you're wasting your time. So yeah, you're going to feel bad, but I guess if that happens to me, I'll just drag a shaky head behind the boat. I don't know what I'm going to do.
So are you going to fish like, I mean, you got the motor guides. I imagine you're going to try to do a lot of like KBF events and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to be at the Timitational, but because I got quarantined for a couple of weeks, it's a lot of time off work. So I think I'm probably going to skip that and go to the Lake Seminole. I'm trying to go to Lake Seminole, the Hobie tournament.
Okay.
But I mean, I have a schedule, but I don't have a schedule in a way, with two young kids and everything.
You're like me. You got a wife and kids, and you can put it on paper and let everyone
Yeah.
know. But the truth is, like, come tournament week, you look at your bank account, or your kid splits their head open, or
yes,
the wife finds out a wedding she's got to go to. There's just so many things that are more important than your kayak fishing adventures.
Yeah, but for this year, I kind of made a pact with myself. It's tough, man. When you have two kids and a family, and you don't have the pre-fishing time that everybody else does, you show up going, man, I got to find them quick in practice, right? So my goal this year is that if I'm going to go fish a national tournament, that I'm going to pre-fish 2 days right before the tournament. That's the only way I can do it right, man. Because like I was trying to go the weekend before, and then you show up on Saturday, a week after, man, it got me. I was on fish. Let me tell you, man, I'm the best pre-fishing fisherman you've ever met in your life, dude. Let me tell you, I was on them. I mean, I was patterning fish. I was calling my shots. I was, I would see them on map. I would go there and catch them. But, it would change on tournament day, and I would try to force the bite, and I wouldn't make those changes you have to make, during a tournament day. And it got me, man. It got me on Chickamauga, and it got me at the national championship too, man. I just have to pre-fish 2 days right before in the conditions and be on the water, to be able to do it right. And the guys are too good now. Back in the day, you can wing it and maybe get a check and maybe win one here and there, but you can't do it anymore, man. You just can't.
We also got people now that are really, I'm not saying they're, whatever. You want to call them a pro kayaking, that's fine too. But they got a lot of people that are investing in them, or a lot of things that are making fishing easier for them, and they're getting out there and they're going down for a week in advance. They're staying there.
Yeah.
And all they're focusing on is fishing, and they're going from one tournament to the next. Granted, they don't have a life like ours where they come home to their own house and they're some of them still live with their parents, or some of them have whatever. Like, God bless everyone. Like, I mean, I'm not hating on anyone, but that's just the reality of something that I've had to accept. Like, if I'm going to tournament fish, I have to accept that there's going to be some people who are going to be better prepared for you. And if you don't want to do it because of that, that's okay too. But if you're going to do it, you can't bitch and complain about it. You got to figure out how to find a way to be successful. And you might not like it, but I mean, that's just a thing that I've constantly had to just balance with. I'm not at a retiring age. And I'm also not at the young, do what I want age. I'm in that weird place in between where it's like, these responsibilities are mine regardless. There's nothing I can do about them. So I still want to do tournaments, but I got to decide if it's worth it to make a certain trip, or if it's worth it or if it's better off to stay home and focus, find a way, maybe like some of the things I had to do last year was like, you can't fish every tournament like you want to, but maybe you can fish 2 or 3 tournaments the way you want to.
Yeah.
That might be the investment, or the better investment than trying to do like a shit ton of tournaments, like half-ass in a way.
That's 100%, man. And yeah, you can get lucky and get on the school of fish the day of the tournament and maybe try to find a pattern, but it's kind of like, in a tournament, when you get to around that 10, 11 o'clock time, right? Everybody knows this feeling when it's not happening. Right. And you're like, okay, this is what I found in practice. None of this is happening. And at that point, and I learned, I had a few bad tournaments where I really learned, unfortunately, that I was not making the adjustments right. And at that 10, 11 o'clock, you have to shift and go, okay, this is what's happening. I need to pack everything up right now and go to a different part of the lake.
Right.
Or I got to completely change what I'm doing in this area and try to figure it out. And that's something that lack of practice at that 10, 11 o'clock, you're kind of like, I don't know I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and hopefully they'll start biting.
Yeah. And like my biggest problem was like, if I don't catch fish in like the first 2 hours, that early morning bite when you're supposed to catch fish.
Yep.
Dude, like I got to work now. Like, I got to spend the rest of the time, like you're second guessing yourself and you're moving from one place to another. You actually end up, like, a lot of times I saw myself last year was I was spending more time moving than I was actually fishing, because now that I'm freaking out, my mind's no longer in a good place. If I'm not getting a bite at a certain amount of casts, I'm like, well, this place has got no fish. And then I immediately said, well, I'm gonna paddle 2 miles this way and go see if they got fish there. And it was just a never ending cycle. That's just like one of those things I got to, like, if that's how my tournament season is going to be, I might have to like pick an area and, win or lose, like that's the area I'm fishing because that's the only area I know. Instead of like trying to make these Hail Marys all the time. You know what I mean? It's just some of the I guess like the obstacles that I've had to face like last season that I don't want to do this season.
Yeah, I had a moment in the national championship. I was upriver a good ways fishing a pocket, and a lot of people were there. Matt Ball, I mean, there were a lot of guys there. It was Cody Milton was there, so I was in a very fishy area. The day before the national championship, I went out and I found some shallow grass that was just full of bait. Man, I'm telling you, it was as live as I've ever seen it. I go and throw a buzz bait. I catch 3 in like 10 minutes, and I leave. And I go, okay, this is where I'm going to start, right? I had like a couple 15s, and I had one about 18 or 19 or something. Pack up. Next morning, day of the tournament, I get there. The water dropped. I could see it on the bluff on the opposite side of the creek. The water's dropped about 2 feet, sucked not all the water out of the grass, but I didn't see any shad flickering. I didn't see any gar. I didn't see anything. It just died, right? And at that point, I fished the buzzbait for about 30 minutes. Didn't get one bite. Nobody, I can see people. Nobody around me is catching anything. I'm like, man, what the heck is going on? I couldn't believe I was just here yesterday, right? So at that moment, I mean, I feel like I saved the day. I packed up. I motored a mile and a half against the current. I had to pass Cody and all those guys. Pack up. Went all the way upriver, more toward the dam, and then I motored 3 miles downriver to a pocket, and then actually say I think I caught like 78 inches on day one of the national championship. That was a win, man, for me.
Right.
That was a win because those decisions right there are the ones that I haven't made earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And I didn't catch enough big fish to cut a check, but I had a good tournament. I think I got 70 something out of 400, whatever it was. I didn't catch him. I made the top 100 the last day, but not enough to cut a check. But those little moments right there, those are wins, man. Because you realize that it's dead. And I talked to Matt and Cody, and they struggled day one, man. They struggled in that area. I mean, that area for some reason just shut down, that water coming out of there. And I don't know what else happened, but I mean, that was stuff like that. I mean, that's what I got to get better at this year. That's what I got to just say, you know what? Make that decision and go, man.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I talked to a lot of anglers about stuff like that. Like you're just having whatever choice you make it and like go with it. But you got to like be confident to make that kind of choice. And like with you, like knowing the water level down, and maybe, and then no. I guess another part that I have, that I got to work on is like knowing why I made the decision that I've made. Not just moving because I'm not getting bit and I'm scared. But like moving with a purpose. Like if I'm going to an area, why are you going there? What made it different than the area you were in? Because if that area is the same, it's just like the area you were just at. There's probably not gonna be any fish there either. There's a reason why there's no fish in these areas. And so going to an area, with a purpose and knowing what I want to do and why I want to do it, I think it's something that I need to work on for like the next season.
Yeah, well, I found a place. I mean, there's a lot of video out there I put out about it, so I don't care about sharing the spot. There's an old steam plant that's shut down way up on the Tennessee River on Gunnersville, and in practice, I caught. I think it was a 22 and a half, and I caught a bunch of 15s, right? So I didn't have that in the middle. I caught keepers, and then I caught a giant one.
Right.
And that was going to be my backup spot, right? So when I was at the other location, nothing happened. I mean, I seriously had to pack up, and it was just straight north about 2 miles. And the problem is it's only about a 1 or 2 person spot, right? And so the whole time I'm going down there and I'm freaking out going, who else is going to be there? Who else is going to be there? Because if I turn the corner and there's 2 guys in there, I'm done, man. Like Yeah. And luckily, I don't think anybody else wanted to make that run. It's pretty far down the river, and then you have to come all the way back and against the current. So it was a pretty good hike, but it paid off. It was one of those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good on you.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna talk about this now because you're a crankbait guy. A lot of people know that. I've heard you do shows doing crankbaits. This year, I'm getting crankbait was the reason why I really fell in love with fishing. But I kind of stopped doing it for like last season. I barely did any like cranking. I did I do a square bill a few times and things like that, but that's about it. But I'm getting back into this year because that's like the way I like to fish. But like one of the things I haven't really been doing that I'm doing now is like making sure I'm matching everything up the proper way, making sure I got the line that makes sense with the reel that makes sense and the rod that makes sense, and really like trying to hone in on like that specific technique. And I've heard you say a bunch of things. You said some things that were they went along with a lot of people talk about. Then you have to do some things that you just figured out that work best for you. And so there's a lot. That's kind of what I want to talk about. And it's been actually a lot of people getting a lot of good feedback when like people like the people I've had to talk about Pacific techniques they actually really enjoy. So crankbaits. The main ones I want to talk about is like square bill and then maybe up to like a medium.
Yeah.
Like, from the bank to maybe 20 feet. We don't need to go deeper. I'm not doing any deep cranking. So, just not gonna do that. I'm not ready for that kind of life yet. But why'd you get into crankbaiting? Why do you like it? What's been some of the advantages that you've had with it? And we'll start from there.
Well, I got into it. So when I started kayak fishing, it was all paddles only, right? That's just. I mean, there were a few people in Hobies, but not many at all. And it was so hard to be efficient doing anything else, like throwing a worm. Like if the wind blows you, it's hard to work a worm. Work a worm or shake your head correctly, because you're always dragging the bait. You're always having to correct with a paddle. And I've always loved how efficient you can be by throwing a crankbait when you're in a kayak, when you're paddling, right? Because you can just let the wind take you. You can just fan cast, really, I mean, any moving bait, spinner baits or whatever. But that's just something that I don't know what it is, man. Even, I just posted a little video of me holding up my first big bass I caught when I was a kid. It was a 4.5 pounder I caught in a farm pond at my some family's property, and I caught it on a rattle trap. And that moment, you just remember like the exact spot on the bank you were doing it. How you were. It was like an old pistol grip rod my dad gave me. It was probably his rod. He probably gave me the rattle trap because it was the best thing I could cast without getting a backlash. You know what I mean? Because it was real heavy. Big 1/2 ounce rattle trap.
Yeah.
And I caught that big fish. And I just love like catching fish on moving lures like that. And it just happened with kayak fishing. It just kept going and going. And then I started doing well in tournaments, and I'll always post what I catch fish on. And a lot of times it was a crankbait. So it just kind of turned into this crankbait thing. And for me, I love running crankbaits down and knocking it off, cover, and feeling that bait get soft. And it's just, there's something about getting that reaction bite that I just absolutely love. And anywhere I go, man, I try to find a way to catch them on a crankbait. Doesn't matter if it's a river, doesn't matter if it's deep, doesn't matter if it's shallow. I even bring them down and catch redfish on crankbaits, just because I know I can catch them on a crankbait if you get it at the right spot. I just love it, man. I love it.
Well, cool. Let's start off with the square bill. That was my favorite, or is my favorite.
Yeah.
I love fishing shallow, and I love fishing like structure. Even with the square bill, like I learned how to fish it in grass. I mean, obviously you can't just throw it anything, but fishing around grass or finding pockets. I had a ton of success with a square bill. What is some of the things you like to do specifically with like a square bill? Like how do you like to fish it? Like the lines that you like to use. Are you going like a heavier line? Whatever. Just talk about like some of the things you like to do with a square bill, and we'll go into specifics as we're talking about it.
Yeah, well, square bill fishing is probably my favorite because the cool thing about square bill fishing is that you can go behind a lot of people who are throwing other things and catch fish behind them because you're getting that reaction bite. And it's kind of a finesse way of fishing it in a way because like somebody's throwing a big spinnerbait or throwing a big chatterbait, and you come back behind them with a square bill, like a silent square bill, that all you're going to hear is the hooks, hitting the side of the bait. I mean, it's a lot quieter than something else going to the water like that, So, but the key with throwing square bills is all about the angles and also, make sure you're hitting that rock or wood. That's the number one thing I try to tell guys is, look, if you don't be scared to throw next to that log. If you have the right equipment, the right line, that bait, you're going to get hung up from time to time. But if you have the right equipment, that bait is going to hit that log and bounce off like it's supposed to and roll right over just like it's supposed to. So, I like to use a lot of guys like fluorocarbon. A lot of the pros use fluorocarbon, but guys like David Fritz, some of these, the masters of crankbait fishing, a lot of those guys still use monofilament, and that's what I use.
You gotta talk me into that because I've heard different things. I've heard people still like to use monofilament, and then
Yeah.
I haven't decided. Like, in fact, I'm so crazy about it. Like, I started using like P-Line has like a copper whatever wire, whatever extra stuff. Because it's the closest thing.
Copolymer. Yeah.
Copolymer. It's the closest thing between fluoro and mono because it's more mono than it is fluoro, but it's got like the same toughness or whatever. So it really found. But like, why do you use mono? Because it is a line that kind of floats a lot. Floats more than fluoro. It does have more stretch, I think, than fluoro does. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong. But whatever. Like, you're right. A lot of people like believe in fluoro. Why do you believe in the mono?
Well, it's I have a lot of reasons actually. People ask me that all the time. Number one is cheap, and I change it a lot. I get the big spools, the big 1,000-yard spools. I mean, every tournament, just only takes 5 minutes. I'll rip it off and and put a new line on. That's one thing. Second thing, it casts really well. I use pretty much 10 to 12 pound mono for all my crankbait fishing. If I'm fishing at a place that has a lot of big fish and I'm fishing a lot of logs and trees, I might go up to 17 pound on a square bill crankbait, but most of the time it's 10 or 12 pound line. Also, mono is it's really good in the cold weather. It doesn't have barely any memory. It still casts great. And let's see, another reason, the stretch, man. The stretch, I never felt like I've lost a fish because I had mono on. Okay. And I know guys like fluoro because they say it sinks, and it does sink. But when you're fishing square bill crankbait, I mean, you're only fishing 4, 5, 6 feet down. I don't need that line to sink. I don't need it. I don't need that bait to get down to 15, 18, 20 feet. It's only going down 6, 7 feet at the most, At
the most, yeah.
So, and let me tell you, I mean, a lot of guys, they love fluoro, and fluoro is great. But for me, that mono, man, I've done it for years, man. I've never had problems losing fish as long as you check your line. You got to check your line, even with fluoro. For nicks, I mean, I'm retying constantly. But yeah, mono, man, it's the way to go with cranking, I think.
And have you ever switched it to like, depending? Look, great. I fish a lot of grass areas, stumps and things like that.
Yeah.
And not too many rocky. I mean, we got rocky areas, but I love the grass. I love being around vegetation and things like that. But do you change? Would you change like the line to like? I mean, sometimes I'll fish braid, just because of the area that I'm in and just how braid can cut through things a little easier. Whatever. Yeah. But do you find yourself changing it all? Would like because you can like. I mean, what I found out with a square bill, I can throw that shit anywhere, and it does really good. I mean, I love it. I mean, it's almost. Yeah, I use it almost the same way I use a chatterbait. To be honest with you, like I mean, as long as it's not just for stupid, ridiculously, like thick or whatever. Like if I can get a square bill in there, like I love getting a square bill in there.
Yeah. See what the problem with throwing mono and throwing like a glass rod is, mono has stretch, and that glass rod, it's a pretty soft rod.
Right.
So if you're fishing somewhere where we have grass, and you get hung up in the grass, it's going to be hard to pop it loose. Right. And get that grass off the bait. So yeah, sometimes I'll actually throw a medium action rod with braid with a leader for like a rattle trap if I want to rip a rattle trap. Because throwing that mono in there, especially you combine that with a glass rod, it's hard to get that bait free. You know, you're constantly going to be reeling up and taking grass off your hook, and it's just kind of you're not being efficient at all.
Well, yeah, then I guess that goes to like the rods, because like when I'm throwing that, I'm usually doing like a heavy. Like a medium heavy rod to rip through the grass, but you're right. A lot of people do use like the glass tips or like a medium moderate or a medium heavy, maybe a moderate action. But when I'm fishing like that heavy stuff, I'll go to like a medium heavy, maybe even a fast action, just depending on like how.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to, or you're just going to be wasting your time. I mean, or just put on a weedless swim bait. Okay. Say screw it.
Yeah. So So one of the things I had problems with that I'm slowly starting to figure out is like when you are throwing in the cover and you want to hit like that log, or if you want to hit that rock, but what are you doing to not get stuck? Because I guarantee a lot of people that are doing that are getting stuck, and they're losing their their $8 to $12 6 cents lure or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of an art, man. It just takes a lot of time, and it's all about the equipment, 100%. It's about the right angles on logs. I mean, if you just throw it right over the middle of a log and you just reel it right into it hard, a lot of times it will get hung up. But there's ways to pick up your rod tip and, kind of move it to the left or to the right. But the key is having a medium action rod with a moderate tip, because basically what that does, it allows the bait, so when it hits, instead of digging and just turning and the hook, hooking into the log or getting pinned into the corner of the rock, it allows that bait to ricochet off and kind of turn on its side and then just keep going. So if you have a stiff rod, if you're using straight braid, if you're, you got a really fast action rod, extra fast rod, it's going to make it a lot harder, for that bait to be able to bounce off that cover, and that's what you got to have to get those bites. So that's the number one thing, is having the right rod. And also, for me, using mono, that helps it even more, you know what I mean, because of the stretch.
Right. Now with the the different lures you use, I'm not sure if you use like one company, but there's different sizes, the 1.5,
Mm-hmm.
the different sizes. Like, how are you going to determine like what size you're going to use for whatever specific situation? Is there only one size you use? Are you going smaller, bigger? Like, how are you deciding?
Well, I do it all by depth. I have two boxes. I have a square bill box on its own, because I love square bills. I have the KVD 1.0s, the KVD 1.5s, and the Rapala Brats. Those are the three. That's all I have, is those three. And the KVD, those 1.0s, man, those things, they catch a lot of fish behind people. Those little small ones,
Yeah.
And they'll go down. I mean, on a long cast, you can get them down to probably 5, 6, maybe even 7 feet if you're using light line.
Right.
But the KVD 1.5 is one of my all-time favorite. I like the silent ones. And then the KVD, the Strike King 2.5s are good. And then you got the Rapala Brats. But for square bills, that's all I use. So that's pretty much, you can also use the shallow one. So that's the 0 to 2 feet, right? For
Right.
the shallow square bills. Then you got the 1.5s that go down to 4, 5, 6 feet depending. And then that's when I jump up to a DT6, which that is my all-time favorite. I've won more money on that crankbait than any other crankbait I ever owned. The Rapala DT6, and that goes from, I can fish that from 4 to about 8 feet, and then I go up to a Rapala DT10, and that'll jump up to the 8 to 12 feet, and then I go up to a DD14, or I use the Strike King 5XDs, and that'll jump me up to 20 feet. And then, I don't do a lot of cranking over 20 feet. I just personally don't do it. But that's my steps, So I have square bills, and then I have a box full of like 6 to 10 feet. And then I have a box that's 10 feet and deeper. Okay. So that's my three crankbait boxes.
Well, yeah. So I don't know if you follow me on Instagram. If you don't, no big deal. It's not that interesting.
I do, yeah.
But I just now got, because like I said, I'm really going to focus on getting better at cranking this year. I don't think I did myself any justice by not cranking. I just didn't. Whatever. I found the chatterbait, and next thing I know, I was hooked on that, and my learning progress with the cranks stopped. Going back, start. Let's just you saw my box. I got my chatter. I got my square bills. And I got my mediums, going. I use 6'6", so I got the two different sizes of which they all got the same depth. They're all 2 to 5 feet with their what is it, the Crush 50s? I think is what they're called, the Crush 100s. And then I go into like my medium fish crankbaits, which goes from like 4 to 8, then like 8 to 12, and then all the way. I think the last one I got is like 17 to 19 as the deepest I go. So let's just say like I'm going fishing. And I'm cranking today. I'm cranking. That's the goal. I'm cranking today. I'm not gonna freak out and grab the chatterbait. We're just gonna crank. All right. So you're starting off from like a square bill. Like I'm pulling up to the bank shallow. Like, what are the angles that we're starting off with, and what is the the process that you're going through when you're throwing that chatterbait? When you're searching, right? When you're trying to find the fish, you're moving from shallow to deep, and you can pick whatever lake and whatever situation that you want. And we'll just go from there.
For me, I'm big on parallel in the bank, and that because you can learn so much by putting your kayak right up against the bank. Because you're like, okay, if I'm up against this bank and I'm sitting in 2 foot of water, I need to back off a little bit. I mean, if we're just talking about general cranking, like in the fall, you're just covering water looking for bait. I'll start off right against the bank, right, and I'll fish that. I'll fish that 2 to 4 feet. I'll just, get right up again, and I'll pretty much cast straight out. And then if it's just too shallow or it's not working, I'll work my way out a little bit. I'll probably get 5 or 10 feet away from the bank, right? So now when you're casting, you're probably sitting in 4 to 6 foot of water, So I might pick up that DT6 at that point. I probably started off with like a square bill, right? And then I'll move over to my left a little bit, out a little deeper. I'm throwing a DT6, and the whole time I'm moving, I have my XI3 on. I put it on heading lock, where I can just point it down the bank, hit a button, and drop the remote, and I can just fish. I don't have to do anything. The boat just stays exactly straight for me down that bank. So now I'm focused on looking at my depth finder. I'm fan casting to my left a little deeper, and then to my right up to the bank shallow until I either get a bite, or I'm looking at my depth finder. I have side vision on, and I can see where the bait is, right? So you start seeing, some shad, out in that 8-10 foot, over here to your left a little bit. That's where the fish are probably a little deeper than you want. And then eventually you just kind of figure it out, man. I mean, every lake's different, every condition is different, but that's kind of a good way to start. Like, I mean, obviously if it's the middle of January and the water's in the low 40s, starting at 2 foot might not be the best, but come springtime, in the fall, even early summer, when you just want to cover water and find fish, I mean, that's a great way to start.
Well, not what I understand, like the square bill, do fish in the parallel, but as you start getting deeper, do you ever throw kind of like quarter cast or whatever, and try to start from shallow and work it out? And then I'm talking like strictly for like searching for them, like when you're really trying to find out like what depth they're into, like kind of like the cutoff, I guess, all the time from just like fishing parallel, going from 2 to 6 to 8 to 12, but that one cast you're covering, depending on like how deep you want to go, like moving up to like more your medium, crankbaits, like starting, like throwing it things shallow, and then working it back out at kind of like a whatever you want to call it, like a quarter angle type.
Yeah, you're talking about like at an angle. I do that a lot too, and I'll base what crankbait I'm throwing on about how deep I'm sitting in, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm sitting in 10, I probably need to be throwing a DT 10 or so, or DT 6 for sure, because if you're throwing up in 3 or 4, it's going to drop off pretty quick to get down to that 10 feet. And the number one thing is you want to be in contact with the bottom when throwing a crankbait. I mean, do you have to be? Do you catch fish that are suspended that'll eat it just going through the water column? Yes, you will. But the number one thing is that bait needs to be hitting the bottom, grinding on the bottom, hitting those rocks, hitting the mud, hitting those trees. That's the key. Is a lot of guys, will be in 10 foot of water throwing a 1.5. And it's just not going to do much, man. I mean, you can get some bites here and there, but if you want that reaction bite and be able to catch fish behind people, that's the trick, is getting that bait to the bottom. Obviously you don't want to overdo it and throw something that's going to go 20 feet when you're in 10 feet, because the bait's not going to react right when it gets down to the bottom. It's just going to get real slow and move real slow and not natural. But you want to come down and be grinding, probably, I don't know, 50% of your cast or more. I mean, you got to get that bait down there. That's the key.
Well, what about like when you're really trying to figure out what they want, right? So you're casting it, you're in the retrieval, I guess. Like, talk more about the retrieval, I guess. It's like, you're right. The one way of it is just to bring it back on the bottom.
Sure.
And then are you changing it up to like hit the bottom, let it come up, bring it back down? That kind of fishing. Like, what are the, I guess, the different retrievals that you'll do? Like, when we're really, because I think that's one of the, like really trying to find a fish with a crankbait can be like kind of frustrating, because they want it the way they want it sometimes. I mean, sometimes
you're right.
They want it to suspend up sometimes, and then what I like to do with a crankbait, or what I like to pretend I like to do with it. I don't have a lot of success, but like fish shows like,
I like your honesty.
I like to fish grass edges, like the edge of grass, which could be like 5 feet to 20 feet deep, depending on submerging grass and things like that. So like the fish in those areas, you're like trying to find the depth that the fish want on that can take all day, and the retrievals can take all day. Like, granted, like if I'm fishing shallow, that probably means it's like the pre-spawn or a good time in the fall, like when those things are like they're up and they're hungry. But when you get to like the summer months or whatever, like certain times of the day where you got to go off a little bit and fish some of those like deeper areas, that's where I struggle with a crankbait. That's what I really want to get good at, and like just trying to figure out what the retrieval is, how deep you want that thing to go. and then that's when my learning, like that's what I'm really trying to figure out is like that kind of fishing with the crank.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, the key is just lots of practice. That's one thing. It's just to get out there and don't catch fish and figure out why you're not catching them. But sometimes you just can't convince them. I fished Chickamauga, a decent amount, and that place gets tons of pressure. And I'll find them on my depth finder. They're there, and I'll switch crankbaits. I'll stop. I'll reel it down to the bottom and just stop it, and then reel it and just stop it. Sometimes they'll eat it then. If there's not a lot of wood or rock down there to run into, or there's no shell or anything like that, sometimes you have to make that bait stop, or just run it by them. They just won't eat it. But, it's crazy because sometimes in the winter, I was fishing. Where was I at? I forget where I was at. Anyway, the water temp was 48 degrees, and they were biting a crankbait like it was the middle of the summer. I mean, sometimes they would just hammer the shit out of it, man. It's crazy. But also sometimes you got to kind of finesse them into it. But I honestly, when you're talking about retrieve, most of the time, man, I'm just reeling it in. And a lot of guys have different techniques for that, and they do this and that. But for me, it's about finding those active fish and covering water and just keeping that bait in contact with the bottom. That's the key, man. That really is.
Okay. Now you say that, because I'm the same way. Like that's the only way I've ever had success with a crankbait, just reeling it in, and they just did it. You see a lot of guys like the reason I thought they called it the crankbait was like you reel it and you pop it and you crank on it, like 1,000 times, and you see guys doing that. Like, why are they doing that? Does it work? Does it make it? Because every time I do that, I've never really had like a bite. You know what I mean? I won't say never. I've had a few bites like that, but it's not like it's ever been like that's how I fish. I'm gonna do that weird popping thing that everyone does. I've never done it. I don't know if that's like a thing. I don't know if it's something you play around with, but I just never really got anything out of it. I just don't know why are they doing that? Like what makes that like, are they trying to represent a dying, desperate fish? I don't know.
Well, I mean, maybe you're talking about jerkbait fishing. I mean,
it looks just like jerkbait fishing, but with a crankbait. That's
I don't know, man. I don't really do a lot of that. I just, for me, it's just all about being around the bait, around the fish in the right areas. And a lot of times, because I do like fishing current, guys have to understand, having that bait come with a current is so critical. I mean, you will fish current all day and not get a bite, but once you get that right angle and get that bait, like I fish Pickwick. I love going to Pickwick and fishing the dam for the big smallmouth. A lot of guys, there's guys that fish up there, but there's not a whole lot of guys that like going up there because they don't want to deal with the current. They don't want to deal with losing crankbaits every cast because it's a headache, man. But if you figure out how to get that bait down where it just ticks the top of those rocks out on Pickwick, man, you can catch some big smallmouth. And a lot of guys, don't want to fight that, or they try to throw big swim baits and it doesn't work for them. But it's just all about the knowing what your bait is doing and keeping it in that strike zone as long as you can.
Right. Well, how did you figure out? Because I don't fish motors yet. Just don't do it yet.
Yeah,
I haven't won enough tournaments yet to fish a motor yet. But like going back to your old cranky days, like what were some of the things you did? Because like one of the hardest things I think I have right now is with the medium crankbaits. It's like been my struggle is getting the right depth, maximizing that lure, the capabilities of getting to the right depth and staying there for a good period of time in the strike zone. That's been like my biggest challenge is getting those good casts. Even if I can stand up, sometimes I have difficulties, but obviously it's a lot easier to cast standing up. But what are some of the ways that you've been able to get to depths that you wanted to get? Like, I mean, going from the fishing line to the rod length, and then I want you to somehow segue. You figure out how you want to do it, but the glass rod over compared to the comp rods or whatever. Like why you chose the one you chose and things like that. Like to be able pretty much to be efficient with the equipment you have and the lure and matching things up, which is always what I want these conversations to really be about is having the right thing to do the right job.
Yeah. Well, it's something I got into. If you can go to a pond or go to a lake where you can get a lot of bites, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
It just takes practice. If you know somebody that's got a private pond that you can go throw crankbaits and catch fish on them, it's going to be anywhere you go. It's just going to be so much easier. It's like turn on a light, man. It's just you're like, wait a second, it's that easy? Like you did it in this farm pond where you see a log and you bounce a square bill off of it. And as soon as it bounces off, the fish eats it. And then you go over to this lake, a public lake, and you see the same log and you catch a fish off of it. It's the same thing, man. It's the same. I mean, fish are the same. So,
Right.
I mean, yeah, you got fishing pressure and all that you got to deal with, but, a lot of guys don't throw square bill crankbaits the right way. They don't throw it against the log. They just throw it and reel it in. But when you get it and knock it off stuff, those fish get surprised and caught off guard and they just attack it. But, yeah, man, it's just one of those things. And like I mentioned earlier is you're talking about using the right rod. So when I really started getting into crankbaits, I learned that having that medium rod, was good. And a medium action with a moderate tip graphite rod, it works pretty good, right? I've caught a lot of fish on those. It's not a problem, but those fiberglass rods, especially the ones, the Legend class cranking rod I use now for St. Croix, I mean, and they have other rods that are a little bit less expensive than the Legend glass using the same blank. They just have different components, but basically, in a way, you kind of lose as much feel as you have with a graphite rod. Because, man, we fish, we're good, man. Like, we know what our bait's doing. We can feel that bite. I mean, as soon as we feel that bite, it shoots up our arm and we set the hook. But the problem is we get almost too good at it, man. So a lot of guys go to these glass rods that kind of slow that reaction down. It allows the fish to eat that crankbait, right? And you don't jerk the first time you feel a fish hit it. You kind of give him a second in a way, right? And I'm using mono, so I have that stretch, and using a medium with a moderate tip fiberglass rod. I mean, those fish just eat it and you got them. I mean, you're going to lose some. Sure. It happens. I mean, nothing you can do, but it just slows down that whole reaction. And that's also why, your bait gets hung up less, because that, it's almost like it's like a delay. If that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah.
That's why people use these. That's why you have a lot of these fiberglass chatterbait rods. Everybody's going to this kind of style rod now, but you just catch more fish, man. You just do.
Yeah, well, frankly, because you're not ripping it out of their mouth, right? Like you do with like a medium heavy
right
fast action, where it's like, because that's one thing. I think it was like the biggest change for me was when I went from a medium heavy fast to a medium heavy moderate action with my chatterbait.
Yeah,
it's not that you just rip it out of their mouth; you rip their mouth open and they got a hole, and so whenever there's any slack in that line whatsoever, the hook comes out, and you can see it. I don't know how many times I pulled a fish out of the water, and the hook set's so violent. Like I ripped that dude's mouth apart. Like it's a big ass hole. Like it's like just a big hole in their lip now that that makes that could be an issue in, like, especially during like the when you're trying to bring them in and you're trying to keep slack out of your line, and whatever reason that there isn't any like you lose the fit. I lost a lot of fish, a lot more fish when I was using like the heavier rods, but when I switched to like a medium heavy moderate action or a medium, like my catch rate improved like dramatically with that. Because of the slowing down, because even though I was still violent, the energy going from the rod down the line to the hook wasn't. Like it was it had give, so it looked badass still, but it wasn't the same. Like like I wasn't ripping it out of the water and tearing its mouth apart, and so I see the difference. And I just don't know about glass yet. I haven't really gotten into that world yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on the science, of it exactly, but I know that the rod, in a way, I mean, it's a very sensitive rod, but it's not like having a graphite rod with braid where you feel that whole bite in your body. You just feel the rod load up, and you got a fish on, and as long as you have a good sweeping hook set, you don't have to do that much. I mean, you got them.
Right.
And also having that moderate tip and that medium action. When that fish does jump, that rod's going to give, man. It's not like it's a stiff rod where, that it wants to pull that bait out. When that fish jumps, comes up and shakes his head, you have that give where that bait just really stays pinned.
Right.
So that's that. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why all these things work, better than, say using those heavier rods, fast action rods.
Okay. Now what type of reels are you using? So with my square bills, I don't care. I use like a 731, whatever, like just whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I've gotten to now where like my mediums, I've gone to like a 631 or something. I even thought about going slower now. For like my medium cranks. What do you like?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on reel? I know some people say it doesn't matter. but then I talk to some people, and then if you're like me, it does matter because I don't have like that awesome discipline to sit there and just
Yeah.
I'm just go super slow. Like I mean,
Yeah. Well, it's I have two. I have two. I use all Lew's bait casters. They just have been my favorite. I use a 6-8-1 for shallow cranking, and it's not super fast. It's not super slow. I like it because when you have a 3-pounder hit it 10 feet from your kayak and your momentum is already moving forward, right? Those are two things that are, it's going to happen real quick, man. And if you can't catch up with that fish, if you're using like a 5-1-1, a slow reel, you're going to be in a bad spot real quick, because you're not standing. You can't, move up to the back of the boat, or you know what I mean? You can't adjust for that. You're there in your seat. You can't move around like you can in a boat and compensate for that. Like you see Mike Iaconelli run to the back of his boat every time he sets the hook. We can't do it. So I like a 6-8-1. I mean, it's like I said, but the key is, you don't want to burn it too fast. You got to keep in your mind, you want it at a good speed. Make sure it's getting down to the depth. I cast out. I do 3 or 4 quick cranks, which gets it down, real fast, and then I'll slow down a little bit. As long as I'm hitting the bottom, I can feel that I'm hitting stuff, that I know I'm right there, right there in the sweet spot. But when I do go up to cranking 10 to 20 feet, I go to a slower. I think I'm using I know it's slow. I don't know if it's 5-1, but it's in the 5s. It's slow. And the reason we want that slow reel is because it has more power, right? So if you're out there casting all day, you're going to kill your arm reeling down a 20-foot crankbait. You're going to wear yourself out, man. Right. So by having that lower, that low, ratio is that you're reeling faster, right? You're reeling a lot faster. The bait's going slower, but you have way more power. It's kind of like when like on a mountain bike, when you get in that speed where you pedal real fast, you're not going very fast, but you have a lot of power to get up that hill. It's the same thing, same exact thing. It's just you got to have that power to do that all day, but it's just less strain on your hand. It's your hand's moving quicker, but it doesn't take as much force. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's less horsepower. It's
yeah. So, but so for deep cranking all day, I do use a slower reel, which gives me more power, which doesn't wear out my hand using that high speed reel all day. I mean, it'll kill your arm all day.
Yeah. Now, what are the like just say like you're going out for a term, like how many rods are dedicated to cranking? Like what's all your different setups for like the granted, like we're very like we don't have the advantage of having like 12 different rods for one purpose. Like we gotta be very efficient with the way we go out. Like how do you do it on your like just we'll say just on your trips down there? Because I know some people will take a shit ton of extra rods in the truck, and so after they go pre-fishing, they'll have the options of knowing what they need and what they want. One of the things I started doing is bringing more extra reels that had different lines and different things on them. But what are some of your setups? Like how you set up to fish the day with like your crankbaits?
I usually have 3 rods. I have my main one is like I kind of set up my rods like I do my crankbait boxes in a way.
Right.
I have a 10-foot or less, which is it's a 6'10" St. Croix Legend glass rod, 6'10". That's the rod I have, the 6-8-1 Lew's reel. I have 12-pound mono on that. So that's that rod. That's a medium with a moderate tip, 6'10" Legend glass cranking rod. And then when I go to 10 to 20 feet, I use I think it's a 7.4, same rod, Legend glass crank, and that's a medium with a moderate tip. And that's when I have that slower reel. So that's my main 2 cranking rods. And the third one, I have the Legend glass spinning rod for throwing those KVD 1.0s. I can throw the 1.0s on a baitcaster, but if it's a windy day, it's gonna be hard. So I like throwing those on a spinning rod, and that's a 6'10". That's also a medium with a moderate tip. And then I have that's my 3 rods. I throw the KVD 1.0s on the spinning rod and any shad wraps I want to throw. So I don't always have that spinning rod with me, not every tournament, but I always have those 2 because that covers from 1 foot to 20 feet on those 2 rods.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I think the casting, that's the part that gets me the most is the casting and trying to find a rod that can help me do that. Have you like what is like the like trying to get that long cast? Like, what are you looking for? You look like how far are you looking to cast it? What are some of the things that you've done to like make that like learning process of not screwing everything up during the cast? That's my thing. I cannot seem to get the cast like for those long casts. I cannot seem to get it down with like the crankbaits. I mean, no, I could throw a jig, I can throw a chatterbait as far as I want, but like throwing, especially like like some of those medium crankbaits, they're not heavy, they're not light, but they're just like they're that weird size that just sometimes they just want to float.
Well, I got a couple things for you. One is go put 10-pound mono on your reel. Okay. Try it. Just try it. Just try it.
You're freaking me out. I'm getting anxiety just thinking about it.
Hey, just try it. Just try it. And fill the spool up too. Make sure it's full. All right. That's probably the number one thing you can do. The second thing is a lot of those, like the Rapala DT6, I believe it's a 3/8. That's not very heavy, right?
No.
So what you can do is get some of those weights. Those weights, you can stick to a crankbait and put one on each side and start there and just see how it works. See if that'll help you make further casts and get that bait down. Now, the problem with that is your bait's not going to want to float out of the cover. If you pull it down there and you get wedged and you stop, it's just going to be there, So you got to deal with that. But you can always add, I forget what they call it. What do they call those things? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I don't remember names to save my life.
Yeah. I can't. But I do keep those. Like if I'm working a bank and I got a bad headwind, and throwing a Rapala DT6, can be tough sometimes at a headwind. I'll put those on there just so I can get that good long cast to make sure I'm getting that bait down, because that makes all the difference. If you're making short casts and you're not getting down, hitting the bottom, you might want to jump up to a deeper crankbait so it will get down to that depth.
Right.
A lot of times when you're fishing current, like on Pickwick, if I'm sitting in 6 feet, but I'm fishing water coming off that dam, I got to throw a DT10 because the current's moving so fast, right? I got to get that bait down there. The only way to do that is to throw something that goes a little deeper. So, but for casting, having a full spool, and I always tell guys, like when it comes to fishing reels, spend a little more. Don't if you need to spend over $100 probably $150 to get a really good reel that's going to cast. Like, have better quality reels. If you can only get 3 of them, just get 3 of them. Don't have 7 cheap reels.
Yeah.
Don't do it. You're just going to waste your time. You're going to get frustrated. Buy 3, quality reels, maybe different speeds, and use those. You know what I mean? That's always a good tip.
Okay. The last question, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, man.
Colors, man. My issue is, like, I know that there's probably only 3 colors that you need. And like, have you seen the 6-inch lures? They're so sexy. I got more of a collection, more of a collector's item than I am buying things to fish with. But what are your opinions on colors, man? Like, what are you investing in? What do you think? Let's just say there's someone out there who wants to get into this and like to save money and not be like me, like have $1,000 invested in just good looking crankbaits, not necessarily the best ones. Like, what are some of the colors that you really think matter as far as crankbaits go? It's
funny you say that. My buddy Robert, he paints, custom colored crankbaits, and I actually got an order coming on the way. But I'm big on shades and not detail. That bait, if you've ever seen a crankbait bouncing down on the bottom, it's happening so fast. I think sometimes it's more about shade, more about the watercolor and, kind of the forage. But for me, I pretty much stick with 3 colors. I have a lot of shad colors. I say a lot of shad colors. I throw a lot of whites, I throw a lot of whites. I keep a lot of whites, like the DT6 silver color is one of my favorite. That's just that gray white kind of mix. That's a really cool natural color. The Rapala and the Helsinki shad is one of my favorite. That's a white. It has a little chartreuse bar across it. It has like a blue top. That pretty much works. That works good anywhere, any lake. Doesn't matter. If the water's muddy, I'll go to maybe a Fire Tiger. Or obviously red. In the spring they love this fish, especially spotted bass. Over here, that red in the spring is just killer. So I'm typically a shad color. I usually have shad, chartreuse, and blackback in muddy water. Right, that's kind of a staple. Everybody knows that. Yeah. Red in the spring, And if it's super clear, I'll go to like a translucent. Some of those KVD 1.5s are kind of clear, kind of green, and
ghost colors, I think is what they like to be called a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, it's honestly, it's shad colors, just a lot of whites, a lot of pearls, some grays, chartreuse with black back, and red. Those three.
Okay.
Those three.
Those are not the three colors I thought you were going to say, but because I'm thinking like blue, or like, you know, I look more like dark, not as dark, and then light colors is kind of how I guess I look at it. So I'll have like really dark colors, and then I'll have like kind of some of those like more greenish, brownish type colors, and then I'll get into like white. And I guess when I say white, I count I can't even say that word right now. Chartreuse in it as well.
Chartreuse, yeah.
Chartreuse. And that's kind of like the color scheme that's like stick with. But let me ask you this about like the deeper crankbaits though. Like what I've noticed, like when I go online to buy, baits that go into like, let's say the 14 feet to 20, you don't see a lot of like many options. It feels like most of those are either like white, chartreuse, maybe a few like really dark colors, but there's not like a lot of options for those colors. Like it's very simple. Like the deeper you get with shallow, you can play with anything, right? Because you're mimicking all kinds of things. But it seems like the deeper colors, the less options you get.
Well, once you get that deep, it doesn't matter. I mean, the color, it's all going to look like the same color.
Right.
I mean, I pretty much, with lack of sunlight, a lot of the colors are going to look the same, so it really doesn't matter. I pretty much stick, I probably have a dozen 5XDs, and they're all sexy shad color.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And I might have another set that are I don't know if it's chartreuse, sexy shad. It has more chartreuse in it. The large, a little dirtier, but that's really the only two that I throw, that deep. When you're talking 15, to 22, 23 feet, that's pretty much what I stick with.
Okay. Well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. I feel like I learned a few things.
I hope so.
Yeah. If not, we spent an hour talking about whatever. But I appreciate you coming on, man. I'm glad you're healthy. Is there anything you want to say about 2021 going into it? Like what people can follow, what they can expect from you, and then maybe thank some of the people that make fishing easier for you?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'll thank my number one sponsor right now, and that's NuCanoe. Those guys it's an awesome team. It's awesome to be part of. I want to thank Blake, Everett, and Mike. I mean, I'm honored to be part of this group, and I can't wait for it to kill us, to kill it this year. But yeah, that's about it, man. I mean, I got a new YouTube channel I started, a Dye Kayak Fishing, and man, I'm just gonna keep doing what I love doing. That's catching fish, using that NuCanoe Pursuit, man. And I also have something really cool coming up. I have a very cool custom NuCanoe Pursuit on the way that nobody knows about, and it's gonna be, I've never seen anything like it. So that's all I'm gonna say about it. We'll see.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Craig. Good luck with 2021. I'm sure I'll talk to you in another few months, but I appreciate your time, man. Really do. And we'll talk later, man.
Thank you.